Welcome to another episode of Erryting Kool. Obviously, let me put the camera on me right quick. We haven't recorded, well, this technically episode 100, but I want to do a special for episode 100. So this can be one-on-one. This can be a teaching type of podcast. Like, we can get into some cool stuff, which I guess, how I would really phrase your Cassius. I would say the man in the hour, but then I would say, okay, Mr. Contra. But I feel like that was your 2023 run. I ain't think you still on the controversial tip right now. Or what you got to say to that?
Nothing I said was controversial. I said absolutely nothing controversial. I mean, if you were on the other side of the...
Yeah, we don't want to do anything to scare your children. That's the last thing we want to do. We don't want to scare anybody.
The tourists come over to chill on the beach, but they don't come over the hill where we sleep. We got nightmares and they got fantasies. No sanity, it's just insanity. My mommy hoping nothing happens to me.
Fence, it was controversial, but if you were on my side of the fence, it was what was needed to be said. And
Indeed.
But I speak the truth.
All right, so I like to start things. Well, typically on this show, we like to do the Bahamian word, phrase, or saying of the day, and we always give that honor to our guests. So the honor is all yours. Any word, Bahamian word, phrase, or saying that you could possibly think of.
Yes, well, motto.
Did we have? We ain't have a motto in a minute.
Well, motto.
Okay, so for the international audience, tell us what well motto means.
Well, motto is a word that really don't have a meaning. It's just an expression of when you're amazed that you say, well, motto. Mm-hmm. How you spell it, I don't know. But if you're amazed at anything, you say, well, motto.
Interesting. Yeah. So let's begin in the beginning. Because I was telling my cousin we was here Friday night, and I was like, I literally been hearing your name. The first time I heard about a Cassius Stuart is in the 2002 Bahamian elections.
2002.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, which grade? I think I was in grade 4.
Jesus.
And I was watching the elections. And then, obviously, this was like, this is the first election I can remember. Mm-hmm. And, and at the time, it was the Tommy T and me and the fresh wind is blow. Like, them slugs hearing it on the radio.
Yeah.
We wasn't really, this was like way before pre-social media. This was like, websites and you browsing the web was becoming a thing here in the country.
No, I walked the earth. That's how long ago that was.
Yeah. So, and then at the time you had your party, BDM, I remember the Purple, and then, ZNS at the time, because we didn't even have multiple stations at that point in time. Mm-hmm. So, I remember the Purple, and then, seeing the different TV graphics back and forth, and just trying to understand the political landscape at the time. Obviously, I was too young, and then, as years progressed, my knowledge of Bahamian politics and understanding it in depth grew. So that's my genesis of you, but what is your genesis? Like, what was life growing up with you for you? And what got you sort of started in your career in the beginning?
Well, I grew up in a large family. It was 22 of us who grew up in...
Hold on, 22 children?
22 of us, 22 people. There was 22 of us in one house.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was just going to say.
And my grandfather was really the one who was the caregiver and take care of us. And so, growing up in Camp Road, there was no clear defined path as to where you want to go. Because, of course, no boy had ever went to college in my family. One of my oldest cousins, she got a scholarship to go off to Cuba, but it wasn't like, okay, I want y'all to go off to school, blah, 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 blah. And so, you know, you had a lot of friends on the blocks every Saturday was so they can get a case of beer, they can go drink and talk basketball, blah, blah, blah. In the 80s, this is when drug was everywhere. And then you find yourself, you know, the one way or the other selling one or two things you don't supposed to be selling. And so, you know, at that time, though, I think my life was being defined as to where I want to go. I met Miles Monroe when I was 14.
Okay.
And that changed the whole direction of my life. And so the father figure, the example, the guide that I needed was found in him. And so, you know, he was young at the time, and of course, been off to college, and you know, he never know nobody who been off to college. So I want to go off to college like Pastor Miles. And so, well, my parents them did not say, "Oh, you're going off to college." So I flew to Miami to go say I going to spend time with my auntie, but I really went to go register for school. I didn't tell nobody. I went and I registered, and I had to go take the GED and take all my stuff in and so on. And when I gave the bill, when I got the registration form, came back, I flew to my mommy and said, "Mommy, I need you to pay my school fee." She said, "What school fee?" I said, "I want to go to school in Miami." And that was how I got into college.
Oh, wow.
And so I took the initiative myself to go off to college. And so, but from there on, it was, you know, how do you, you know, I went to fly plane, of course.
So what you went to school for exactly?
Aviation. I went for aviation
Okay.
at first, but of course, I'm a single parent. My mother had no money to pay for aviation, flying, and university, so I had to decide what to do. So I switched to business. And so I got my associate's degree from Miami-Dade, and then I transferred on to Tennessee State, where I got my bachelor's degree in business management. It wasn't an easy struggle. It was a hard struggle because, of course, single parent, you know, mommy, and you know, I didn't come from a rich family, and so we had to struggle. There were times when I had to budget $5 a month in college. You know where you can get your next meal from. And so we had to make it work. And so, you know, God was gracious to me. There were people who would walk up to me and give me free food and bring me groceries who don't know me. And so you're talking about miracles, I saw them. I saw them in university. But I came home, I graduated, and I started a computer company, Information Systems Designers. And we were the first ones to put computers on every island in the Bahamas.
Okay.
We were the first ones to introduce computer systems into NIB. All their staff got computers and networking. And so I trained most of the people who run all of the major networks for banks. I trained them now in the Bahamas.
Okay, so what was the backdrop? I guess, how did the Bahamas feel to you, like, at the time? Because obviously this is post-independence. We're about, I guess, 20 years in at this point.
Yeah. You know, at that time, you know, I remember going through the 92 elections, not just voting. Of course, this was the end of the Pinland era. And I remember the Hubert Ingram era, where the wave of young people, and a lot of us supported Hubert Ingram because we wanted to change. I didn't know much about the corruption in the PLP at the time until someone sat us down and told us, listen, this is what's really going on. Because, of course, we were in university. We wasn't focused too much on national politics. And then so we supported the Free National Movement in 92 and 97 in that era because, of course, there was a change and there was something new going on in the country. And so the Bahamas at the time had a low debt DEBT rate. So I think it's probably would have been 1 billion, 2 billion.
At that time?
Yeah, it wasn't that much. It was a bit 1 or 2 billion. Of course, we were still developing. We didn't have of course, it was Ingram who was accused of having a Gussie-made cabinet, a big cabinet. Of course, that was the beginning of the Gussie-made cabinet. That's where the word came in. And you know, from that point, you know, you began to follow it closely. I mean, for me, when I came home from university, I was training a lot of young people, and the College of the Bahamas was working closely with our company where we train their students and bring them in and teach them about networking and computer systems and so on and so on. And interestingly enough, I was nominated as Most Distinguished Youth in New Providence, and I was awarded Most Distinguished Youth in New Providence for all of the work I was doing with young people and developing young people. And at that time, I was then selected to be a part of what they call the CARICOM Youth Summit. It was one of the first times that you had the Caribbean people from all over the world. They took everybody into Eleuthera for a 2-week period to redevelop the concepts of issues that young people are facing in the Caribbean and come up with solutions and so on and so on. And then the culmination of all that, we went to Parliament to speak. So the first youth parliament, I was the first Bahamian young person to speak in the youth parliament. And then after I finished speaking, the man who was in charge, he said, listen, I need you on the plane tomorrow to go to Barbados. I said, okay, I'm there. So we flew to Barbados to another international youth summit where we had young people from all over the world in Barbados dealing with issues that young people face. And, I was able to give my contributions from the Bahamas. And then culminating from that, I was then say, okay, we want to make you a CARICOM Goodwill Ambassador. So I was made a Goodwill Ambassador for CARICOM, Youth Ambassador. That then allows me to go to the United Nations. And so on 2 occasions, I was able to sit in the General Assembly and be able to help and bring deliberations. I was also asked to be a part of some non-governmental organization for the United Nations in different parts of the world, whether it's Suriname, in The Hague. And so, but going around the world and addressing matters on an international level was an eye-opener for me. One, I was young. I never had the experience before. And it was an eye-opener to see how politics works at the international level, and then how politics interchange with non-governmental organizations to affect change, whether it be for poverty alleviation, female genital mutilation, whether it be for dealing with sex workers on the streets, and so on. So all these issues we were addressing at the United Nations level. And, I remember almost getting arrested at the UN for protesting. So my protest started long before. And, I was talking to, 1 or 2 people. I'd go and fly back, and I'd come back and I'd see the problems we were facing. I'd go away, the UN would call and say, we need you here, and I'll go and we'd address these matters and bring resolution to these matters, and I'd come back home. And, just a burden was on my heart. How do we fix the Bahamas now? I mean, I tired of fixing everybody else's problem. What about the Bahamas? And then somebody whispered, you need to start your own body. And
so, because that's what I was going to ask, because what was your thinking between 92 and 2002? Because obviously at this point in time, obviously you would have had 25 years of the PLP, and then the FNM would have been not really a fairly new party.
Yeah, that was 10 years. So it was 10 years by that time.
Yeah.
By the end of 97, it would have been 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, it was, okay, let's start something new. Because you didn't want to, because, of course, the FNM had come into power, and then they became part of the problem, per se. The PLP was, they were the problem, per se. And so can we bring something new? And so we thought at that time that, listen, let's see if we could bring something new to the dialogue, new to the Bahamian politics. The first time I ran, I was in St. Margaret. It was me and Peter Puch. I ran against Peter Puch, and the PLP did not have a candidate. The FNM had a candidate. Peter Puch was independent. And so it was me and them. And so, Peter Puch won that election. But that was the beginning of my political career. A lot of people didn't know who I was, didn't know what we were all about until the issue of handcuffing myself to the mace. Because remember now, we were protesting about gerrymandering. So if you follow the history of the Bahamian people, Bahamian politics, it was Pinland who fought against the UBP. And the UBP were cutting up seats, like Harbour Island had 2 seats. And so, small as Harbour Island is, they would have two seats. And so they would, what they call gerrymandering to win the election. Pinland said, listen, y'all got to stop. Pinland threw the mace out of the window because they were doing the very same thing, cheating to win. And so he won, and he never did anything about it. Ingram came up against in
the 87 election.
Ingram came up against Pinland in the 92 election and said, we're gerrymandering. Y'all need to stop it. We can fix it. So in the manifesto, they talk about how they're going to stop gerrymandering. They won. They didn't fix it. And so for us, we're like, listen, if the UBB did it to the Pinland said you could fix it. He didn't fix it. Pinland did it to y'all. You say you was going to fix it. Y'all didn't fix it. Something got to be done. And so our protest was basically to show that how the Bahamian politics has been handcuffed. And so we handcuffed ourselves to the speaker's mace to show the demonstration, the protest against the gerrymandering of elections. And so that was my introduction to the Bahamians. More people know who I was, and everybody know who this crazy young person is who gone and handcuffed himself to the mace, and we shut down Parliament, and so everybody was waiting to hear what I had to say. So they expected me to be a crazy person. And then when I opened my mouth, it was a different story. I wasn't that crazy. But it was about showing your protest against injustice. And if it was injustice against you, then you should rectify it so you don't have do the very same injustice against somebody else. And so that was my introduction to national politics. People began to listen to me now. Then we laid out a 40-year plan for the nation. We talked about how we want to transform the Bahamas by making the Bahamas a metropolitan society where you have the University of the Bahamas in Andros, and we want to build a new city. We talked about making the Bahamas a green society where we integrate trees and better living spaces throughout the Bahamas. We talked about how we're going to, of course, build not just the School of Agriculture in Long Island, but also build a School of Agriculture part like BAMSI in Andros. And so we had this grand plan when people could not see beyond 5 years because that's all they were used to. They were trained for 5 years. We talking 40 years now. And you're all crazy. How you could think in 40 years? But, you have to plan as a leader, plan for a generation because 40 represents a generation. And so we outlined a plan, and, a lot of people bought into it slowly. And so, the election came and gone. We did not win. The Progressive Liberal Party won that election, I think, in 92. And then...
no, 92 was after them. You're talking about 2002?
2002, sorry. 2002, right. Yeah, 2002. That was the first year. They won that election. And then, of course, we know how the story ran. We had mismanagement after mismanagement and spending after spending. And so from $2 to $3 billion to $12 billion in debt. And then and GDP was probably around 35%. Last year it ran up to almost 100%, more than 100%. And so, you're watching from different perspective. I'm watching it almost from the inside and seeing how we are mushrooming into a Bahamas where we cannot sustain the debt, we cannot sustain the heavy cost of living, we cannot sustain the inflation. And then also one of the greatest struggle that we have is that everybody broke in the Bahamas. And so, we talk about building a society. You cannot build a society on the backs of people who are broke. You got to make sure that as the country prospers, the people who are building prospers as well too. And so we got to find a way of trickling down the revenues away from just the haves or the few, and then try to trickle that down to people who are the average man. That is a challenge, but it has to be done because it doesn't make sense having a successful country and most of the people broke.
So at this juncture, because this would have been 2006 going into 2007, obviously we had the global recession in 2009. Mm-hmm. As you were thinking and scheming of these different things, like what was your mindset at that point in time to look at it like from the perspective you had thinking at that time? Because I think after 2009, it changed everybody, like even up until today, how we view money and how it's supposed to look and things like that. Because that was like the first real, I guess. Obviously, you had other downturns in the economy since then, but I think that was like a pivotal point where people saw you could really lose it, and
Yeah, that I remember that era, and one of the things that really stood out for me is that how does America have so many universities and all of them studying economics and none of them could figure out the problem? None of them could figure out why the economy is crashing, why They have the collapse in the market and so on. But one of the biggest problems is that spending, overspending.
Commercialism.
Yeah. I mean, commercialism is one thing, but I mean, when you're looking at, you see, one of the theories we have in government is that you got to spend your way out of a recession. You got to spend your way, you got to keep spending. The problem is that if you were to break that down on a macro level, if you broke and you spend everything you have, you still ain't have nothing. You see? And so you have to find a way where you could have a savings portion where you should not spend everything you have. And the problem is that, America was living on a false economy. Credit card spending. Everybody got credit card spending. Because what happened is that when you measure GDP is measured by the amount of goods and services that are produced or in an economy. So every time you buy a soda or you buy a piece of clothing or a car, that's added to the GDP. But if you keep spending, then the GDP looks good. But when you look at really and truly, you're spending on something, you're spending on credit. So they were spending on credit. And so really you had housing bubble going where they built all these homes, and the problem with homes is that if you don't have people move into them within the first 6 months, then you can factor in termites and you can factor in erosion and so on. And so a lot of the homes were unoccupied because people didn't have the money. And so you had this cyclical effect that caused the whole economy to spiral out of control. And we have to, the same way they had to put on their brakes and put on measures to be able to control the amount of flow, control the capital flow from the central bank level. You have to also look at it on a individualism level. You cannot just spend everything. You got to control your capital. And so savings become critically important for countries like ours and so on. The problem is most Bahamians only got $300 or less in the bank. Out of all the bank accounts in the Bahamas, most Bahamians only have $300 or less. So the actual amount of revenue that we have is very, very, very small. That spells for a disaster because COVID was the acid test. Because when you look at it now, we had reserves for national insurance. And what happened was because most people didn't have no money in their own personal bank account, they then had to go to social service and national insurance. We depleted the national insurance fund because we now had to deal with this immediate need of feeding these people. The trouble is, that was the pension plan. So right now, when those who are retiring soon, do they have access to pension? No. So there's no more pension money. So the government is now saying, okay, then we're going to have to up the national insurance rate now so that we can replenish that fund. The trouble is we'll always be here because if we don't put safety measures on that fund, listen, this is pension money and it can't be touched no matter what. Because what happened is that you put future Bahamians at risk at the expense of people who did not take care of their own or secure their own financial whereabouts today. In other words, if you didn't save, you wasn't fiscally responsible, then the state have to take care of you. But in the state taking care of you, it putting other Bahamians at risk who actually invested into the pension plan and they don't have access to nothing. And so it's a very interesting dilemma that we find ourselves in. Moving forward, there are some things that we need to do. We need to make sure put together safety measures for the pension plan, but also too we have to create new source of wealth for Bahamians. I'm not sure if you remember several days ago, the Prime Minister sent out a warning shot to the Life at Key saying the days are over for the rich and so on.
Well, he said this within the last few months. I don't know if he went back and reiterated those same statements.
Yeah. So him saying that is basically it's bluff. Really, it's bluff.
Yeah.
Because you cannot legally take monies from people who legally made their money. Yeah. They made this money. You cannot legally take their money. I don't care how rich they are. Now, if you gave them opportunities through your government and previous governments, you can't come back retrospectively and say, listen, we want that money. They made that money. What you need to do now is that in your budget, you budgeted $60 million for consultant, then make some new millionaires out of that $60 million. You understand? And so you bring the new millionaires in, you make some new millionaires, then they get their families to take care of, and so on. And then you keep replicating it. So if you have $60 million for each year for 5 years, how many millionaires you can make? You see? And so instead of trying to go after the people who got the money or who made their money legally, create new millionaires, create new wealth.
Because in some countries, I think Mexico, they had a situation where at one point in time, they sort of, I guess, people had business ideas for blue collar work, whether it be mining or tech or things like that, and the government sort of quasi invested into those industries, and then it sort of helped them with the capital.
But I mean, just case in point, right? I mean, you have the fishermen. You have Moors Island. You get a lot of fishermen down there who bring in fish. You get Spanish wells who basically hold on their own. But if you have people like islands like Moors Island and them who have these big fishing communities, but they don't have no freezers or no packaging and canning, then what you do is you quasi-invest. You quasi-invest and so on. And you say, listen, we'll buy the freezers and we'll buy the packaging and so on and so on. We'll pull our money out once the sale of these goods, fish, and so if we put $1 million in, we pull our money out first, we pay back the government, and then moving forward, you split the revenue shares. You split the revenue shares, or if you want to, at that point of taking the money out, you turn it over to them to continue running it, then that's up to you. But you have to find ways of stimulating growth. And so the problem is the government doesn't stimulate growth if you don't belong to them or believe in their colors or support their party. We have to get past the point where we are so blinded by and we are divided. I understand the dynamics of politics. I'm not ignorant to that. But when you run in a small country like the Bahamas, you got to make sure that everybody have access to wealth. The trouble is, though, it's difficult to control people who are wealthy. It's difficult to shut people up who are wealthy. And so if I made you rich, or quote unquote, I gave you the opportunities to get rich, then when you are wealthy now, you don't have to stay back and take my edicts and my dictates. You could stand on your own. The problem is that we want always somebody to take our edicts and our dictates because we always want to feel like we're in control. And that's the scary part. And so, but leadership does not try to control people. Leadership is about liberating people to be able to explore their own future and explore their own desires. But the Bahamas is at a serious crossroad because I'm really afraid for the Bahamas. And the reason why I'm afraid for the Bahamas is because, there's considerable amount of talk about natural resources in the country. There's considerable amount of talk about oil, considerable amount of talk about carbon credits. There's considerable amount of talk about money, and all this potential money that whether it exists or don't exist. But nobody talking about the health of the people.
Yeah, or the education of people. Because back to your point.
So I was getting to that. So
okay.
So you have the people who are unhealthy. Then for the last, as far as I know, the educational standard has always been desired, right? A D average. So you cannot be unhealthy and uneducated and expect prosperity. It doesn't work that way. We need to figure out, take all our focus off these fictional monies out there in the wind and figure out how do we deal with 155,000 people who get diabetes. That's 40% of the country.
Wow.
Okay? How we deal with the other 200-something thousand people with high blood pressure, right? And then who is killing us with cancer? Why so many Bahamians are dying from cancer? What is killing us? Who is killing us? So if all things being equal, in 40 years, most people we know as Bahamians will be dead.
Yeah, that's true.
And so why are we worrying about whether or not we get some bush that can suck carbon out of the air when everybody dead? And so...
Because the people who having these conversations have better access to healthcare.
But not so, just... Yeah. See, but even those who have access to healthcare are still getting sick. You see? No. It doesn't spare anybody. This cancer thing that is killing us doesn't spare anything. And then God forgive us, the hospital it doesn't give you anything good to say about them because, people are sick and dying and you go to the hospital and you just get dead even more. you know?
Yeah.
And so the healthcare system is also one to be fixed. And so there's so many different engines in this thing called the Bahamas that needs to be repaired because we unhealthy. The healthcare system needs to be fixed. We uneducated, but the educational system needs to be fixed. And so, you know, so without those two, then, you know, you're talking about finances and money. See, because we've been trained to think that success is primarily money. We've been trained to think that a country's prosperity is whether or not we are GDP positive and so on. If you get the dumbest country in the region, you are not successful. I don't care how your GDP is. If you are the sickest country in the region, I don't care what your GDP is. That cannot be sustained. Because in order to run a country, you need people. If your people are unhealthy, they are unproductive. And that's the fundamental problem with the Bahamas right there.
We're unproductive.
We're unproductive because if you're sick, how you go to work?
We're not just sick, body-wise sick up here too.
Yeah, I mean,
so like, you know.
You see, and so those are some of the key issues that we need to fix. But, you know, there is a remnant, though. I mean, I always believe God always keep a remnant. You know, there are a remnant of Bahamians who have what it takes to pull us out of this quagmire and into prosperous Bahamas. You know, when I study people like Lee Kuan Yew from Singapore and how he was able to transform the entire Singaporean country from a peasant mosquito coil, one company manufacturing, into the number one in education, number one in this, number one in everything, all because of leadership. You know, people don't understand the importance of leadership. The problem with the Bahamas is that leadership is but favoritism. I like you because your hair this, your hair curly, or your skin light, or we got to support her because she's a woman, or we got to support her because he's the, you know, you support leaders because of their vision and their ability to transform your life, not because they a little light skin or the hair a little curly, or you know they could speak good. You know, we all mixed up in the Bahamas, and so for me though, I was glad that I had the opportunity over the last couple of years to be able to educate the masses of people as to what to look for, what are the issues, and what leadership is all about.
So on the back of that, so we going from 2009 to 2012. So now we're in essentially the start of the social media era. Mm-hmm. So where everybody getting a little bit more tech savvy, and then from 12 to now is a push towards like tech and getting more technologically advanced. But at this period of time, you made a very interesting move. You joined the political infrastructure as it was. Which one are you doing? Because what I saw, it was like a year ago. I watched one of them old videos which you was in, because you used to be on Controversy TV.
Oh yes,
yeah.
yes.
And like all them videos up there, like if you could find them, they are on YouTube somewhere. Mm-hmm. But yeah, because it was at 2012 was at this time to where.
Yeah, you know what? It was interesting because it was right in the same area. I ran in Seabreeze area. There was a by-election. The by-election was between Malcolm Adley. Malcolm Adley was he had quit because he was an absent politician. So the PLP had flew in Ryan Binder. Ryan Binder wasn't living in the Bahamas. Marvin Binder's son. It was me and the FNM candidate at the time. And people say to me, Mr. Stuart, we ain't know who this Ryan Binder is. He just reached. He got an American passport. But we see you every day fighting for us. Then when the rubber meets the road, they still go over the very same man. You say you're in LZ because he wears a political party jersey. Don't know this man from the man in the morning, right? He ain't never do nothing for the Bahamas. He ain't never say nothing for the Bahamas. Prior to that, daddy did, but never him. And they voted for him. And so, you know, I said to myself, I don't know. I don't know if it really makes sense. It really makes sense to continue struggling in the third force when here comes a man nobody knows, never fought for nobody in the Bahamas, but they still vote for him.
Yeah, because it's affiliation.
Yeah, and so that was for me the reason why we decided. So we said, listen, we got to decide to do something because people ain't gonna vote for us. I don't know why. I mean, we want them to, but they just seem to be stuck in a box. And it may be the fact that, you know, in order to save humanity, you have to come from being God and come into humanity, eh? You know, you may have to go in to save them.
Yeah. So, was this around the 2012 election was, I think, the invention of people, Bahamians, opening up their minds to third-party politics?
Yeah, they open up their minds for dialogue. I think it's more lip service. Oh, we like what you're saying. Keep their foot to the fire. Oh, keep their foot to the fire. They just want somebody to keep their foot to the fire, but whether or not they will support is another story. I have not seen that manifested. You know, even the last election, the last election was, the third parties need to come together. If they come together, then you can get my support. 5 parties came together. They voted me in as a leader, so I was the leader of the coalition of 5 political bodies. We ran, and they still ain't vote for us. So I don't know what they want. I mean, you say this is what you want. We give you what you want. You still ain't gonna vote for us. Then you can say, keep their foot to the fire. Keep your foot to the fire. We keep their foot to the fire. You still ain't gonna vote for us. And so, you know, for me, I think, though, Bahamian people vote on their bellies.
Yeah.
They vote with their bellies because it's what you can give me and if you can feed me now. And it's all the fanfare and the show. So if you can be able to compete at that level with the show, the fanfare, and make sure feed some people, then maybe possibly they will give you their support. But if they don't see that you have the strength to compare or to compete with the major parties, they always default back. It's always default back. Mind you have a handful who are willing to take that risk and think out of the box and do what they need to do. There's a handful, you know, probably in every constituency, 100, 200, 300 people max. But is it enough to take you over the hurdle? I have not seen it manifested. Is it possible in the next election? I don't know. Will people willing to take that risk? I still don't have that answer.
So, would you say you done with frontline politics?
I've never left.
So, okay, so you still...
What you think this is? What you think this is? I ain't frontline politics.
Oh, man.
I campaigning.
I got to slide into that as we move through the timeline. But because some people would say, okay, you've been from this juncture, you've been trying from 2002. Obviously, because of snapshot election, the election happened in 2021. But roughly, you've been at this at 20 years with no success. Why still continue?
Well, relative. See, what you call no success, in retrospect, when I look at the policies that I was advocating for, most of them have been implemented. I've never sat in the House of Assembly, but most of the things I've advocated for, most of the things I fought for, most of the plans that I've written down were already implemented.
So policies like what, for instance, over the 20 years?
There are various policies. I remember a particular policy I was advocating for customs. It was customs. It was an issue with customs that I was rowing about how could you give exemption for everybody under, there was a certain age barrier, remember? You got to be over 18 or something like that. And I advocated, I said, no. Once you're a Bahamian citizen, everybody should get exemption. You know, because at first it wasn't that way. It was an age barrier. They were saying kids were not allowed to get exemption. And I said, no, that ain't how it's supposed to go. You know, every Bahamian citizen is supposed to get exemption. And that was implemented. The first person who row about air tax was me. You know, we were at a conference over Paradise Island with a professor from the College of the Bahamas. His name was political science professor. Okay, and we talked to Perry Christie about air tax. He didn't even know what air tax was at the time. It was me who talked and went nationally talk about the Bahamas government's not getting their money from air tax. Now, we're getting a couple of dollars, but it was me who introduced that. And so a lot of the things, I mean, I could go on and go on. I got to dig up in my memory bank, but a lot of the things that's going on today, I advocated for. And so success is relative. Have I ever sat in the House of Assembly? No. Have I affected change in the Bahamas? Yes. So for me, I was able to do my part, not being there, but still being here and making it happen. See?
Yeah. So why not just become like, I guess, a political activist versus?
I don't ever quit. I'm not a quitter.
Okay.
I was born foot first. I was named after Muhammad Ali. Cassius Clay. You go to your grave fighting. If you don't win, you don't win. But at least you know you never quit.
Okay.
You see? And so for me, it doesn't faze me not winning, not sitting in the house. Because you name me one politician. I mean, there are scores of politicians out there. But the Bahamians don't know them. People who sat in the House of Assembly are still unknown. There are people I saw in the Senate today, I don't even know who they are. They're in the Senate, and they don't know who they are, but they know me. Who's more effective, me or them?
I think you effective is you the route you've taken in the last 3 to 4 years.
3 to 4? Mm-mm.
Well, no, I mean more so for a newer generation when
Yeah.
it comes to the implementation of social media. But like I say, in my mental cycles, I know you from 22.
No. Scores of people know me from
yeah.
Margaret. And so you're right, for the new generation now, this new TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
what I'm
on.
saying.
Oh yeah, they eat that up.
Yeah.
They eat that up. I mean, that's their language. You can't go into a generation without being able to speak their language. And no politician today have more followers on social media than me. So when I open up my mouth and I speak, I'll get 20, 30,000 people viewing my messages daily. And that's the power of social media. And so it's because you got to understand their language, you got to reach them where they're at. The Republic, the United States Congress has just banned social media, TikTok. But I mean, that'll do more detriment than anything else to them because they're trying to really control how people get access to information. And I remember fighting ZNS. I remember protesting against ZNS. I remember blocking ZNS Gate, all because the one TV media just choose not to cover me when I was a young politician. And so I block them, I fight them, listen, nobody could come in to ZNS and come out. And I ain't leaving here until you all put me on TV. Now, I don't need your TV station. I could be anywhere in the world and record a TikTok message and every Bahamian see me. You see? And so it changed the game. And so it changed the control from being on national television, while it has its merit, to having access to everybody through social media. And so the move that they pulled on me on Beyond the Headlines the other day by having me removed because I was speaking out against the government and what they're doing, it doesn't hurt me per se, it hurts the station. Because later in the day, I had people text me saying, when you left Beyond the Headlines, I left. And so they refused to watch the show because I'm not there. But for me, it's about speaking truth. And the thing about leadership is that truth hurts sometimes. And always remember to keep people who can speak truth to you closest to you. When you have somebody who always praise you, don't keep them around you too much because you will never be able to strengthen your weaknesses and sharpen yourselves on people who are always kissing you behind. People who always challenges you and tell you need to change this and do this for the better, those are the people who are the best for you. Now, they hurt you. It hurts to always hear criticism. It hurts because you don't want to hear that. But those are the best people to keep around you because you're always on your P's and Q's and you're always trying to be better. And so for me, though, it's about making sure that we could reach Bahamians where they're at and tell them the truth. Tell them why X and Z does not add up. That's what it's all about.
Okay. So now that we in the current era, and based on what you said, has been 40 plus minutes in. So so your recent messaging has been more right-wingish in recent years versus some of the things you were talking about earlier as you was going to the different UN, different conferences and things would be perceived as more left-wing. So talk to me about that transition, or what's your perspective on that?
Well, Most Bahamians are right-wing. Most Bahamians are conservative. We've all been brought up in a conservative mindset. We had to go to church. We had to pray. You know, we don't believe in abortion. We don't believe in same-sex marriage. We don't believe in homosexuality. This new culture that has seeped in from America and that has been seeping in slowly and slowly and slowly is planned. That's not generic. That is planned. There is some gentleman in the 70s, I'm trying to find the article, where he put his billions of dollars behind pushing homosexuality from 1970s. And so even at the United Nations, when I sat in the UN, you know, there were females who used to come in our young people meeting, and they keep telling us, "Oh, you all need to push for alternative lifestyle and this and that and so on." So they were pushing this agenda from then. This was in 1997. I mean, we didn't know exactly what they were talking about, you know, but they were trying to push it through us so that we can get these things adopted at the UN level. They were strategic in their approach. The problem is the people who are right-wingish or conservative are not strategic. The Democrats are very, very strategic, very brilliant in what they do. And that's why they have such success. And they're all unified. The other day when the impeachment of Mayorkas, the House impeached him, it went to the Senate. Not one Democrat senator supported. Even if they believe he did wrong, they still stuck the party line because they're unified. While the Republicans are trying to oust the House and this one this way and that one, there's no unity. And so the problem with us in the Bahamas is that we compromise. The problem is that when you start to compromise slowly, you let we accept abortion or we accept same-sex marriage, then it deteriorates the society. We can't compromise on our principles and our values. I'm not right-wingish. I am right. And so I believe that there's something called relativism and absolute. The truth is never relative. In other words, is it relative to the times? And this is what's happening in society. The truth is never relative. Whether it's happening in society, whether it's a fad, the truth is always the truth. It doesn't change. And so we got to always be mindful that at the end of the day, we still have to give an answer to a higher calling. And for me, though, I want to be able to say I gave my best. I stood up for what I believe was right, what I know is right. And, we all got to answer to the king. And whether we think we got to answer the man, we also got to answer to God, too. And so there are some things that he detests. If he detests it, I detest it, too. That's all. I mean, so I don't have no opinion on homosexuality. I don't have my opinion. In the kingdom, you don't have an opinion. The king says wrong, is wrong.
So did you think, coming off your point, because obviously, not just in the Bahamas, in the Caribbean, we were raised in a more conservative society, as well as, majority of the developing world is more conservative than liberal.
Yeah.
And that's why some people may tie modernization to liberalism.
It's strategic. It's strategic. Liberalism is strategic. That's not a random occurrence. That's not has to do with modernization. That's a planned strategic agenda to push a lifestyle that people want to feel comfortable with. Now,
but not just the lifestyle. I'm talking about like when it comes to, let's say, like global warming and certain modernizations of green spaces and agriculture and things like that.
No, see. My views on this global warming thing, carbon credits, climate change thing is a little bit different from everybody's view because, a lot of people doesn't understand that we think that the carbon emissions from our vehicle and our industrial plants is really causing the earth to heat up and cause the earth to go chaotic. And while we may have a small fingerprint in what's going on globally, I think the biggest problem for the earth is not the car problem, it's the human problem. The earth is a living organism. And if you follow the laws of Einstein, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so when you go against natural laws, there's a reaction. So in other words, if you slaughter 800,000 babies every year, You don't think there's going to be a reaction to that? Think about it. Because
course.
the blood of those children cries out from the earth. The earth is reacting to the behavior of mankind, not the fact that our cars emit emissions.
So you don't think this has been just an overdue cause and effect? Because obviously, to your point with the 80,000 toddlers, there's been millions upon billions of innocent bloodshed over time.
But what I'm saying is, I mean, and so the earth reacts to human behavior, and so the negative behavior, or the negative, unnatural behavior of man and a man and woman and a woman, there's a reaction to that. You see, and so, but I think it's a red herring though. If they can get you to believe that it's the trees and the this and the that, then you can keep your behavior. You don't curve your behavior. You see. But they throw you for a loop saying, oh, carbon credits, and oh, you can eat this, and oh, the oil is this and that, and you keep you looking at the wrong things. But when you look at Leviticus says that, listen, if you do these things that they do in the land in which I'm driving out, then I will curse the land will spit you out. The earth is really trying to spit us out because of our unnatural behavior.
So you don't think industrialization don't have nothing to do with it?
It may have a small fraction, but
Okay.
I mean, there are many studies and say that industrialization have a very, 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 very small effect on the planet. But a lot of people don't realize the planet Earth is living. It's a living organism. And it's like when you have an upset stomach, when you eat something bad, they want to spit you out. We are that bad thing that we eaten inside because of our unnatural, lewd behavior that the earth cannot see. Because if you read scripture, it says that nature is waiting for the redemption of man. In other words, nature knows what we're supposed to look like. But because we go against what we look like, nature is reacting to that. But see, with this type of message, they want me to talk about car and combustion engine and all. I got time talking about combustion engine. The combustion engine is y'all fooling with them little boys. Y'all having sex with each other as man and man. That's a detestable thing.
But what question with that? So if based on your premise, why not instead of when society was less developed, when these things were more rampant?
Well, not necessarily, no. You think so. I mean, let's consider ancient Greece. All right? They were lewd. What happened to Pompeii?
They
Right?
got destroyed.
Okay.
But I'm saying the cycle.
I mean, so it's not an isolation though. You can go through history and see what happened to the Roman Empire. You know, what happened to all of the fall of the Roman Empire. You look at all these civilizations that practice homosexuality. The Roman emperors were liking boys and so on. What happened to them? They got destroyed. Why you think so? We ain't no different from them. So it ain't got nothing to do with whether we industrial or not. They was an industrial. They were practicing their foolishness. The holy mountain erupt and the volcano erupt and kill all them. Because nature reacts to mankind. Simple.
So how? Because obviously, when this was? This was like around this time last year. I believe your first video, like was you like the clip when you was on the show, went viral. Like, what was that day like when you saw that now? Video of you on a talk show of almost millions and millions of views, and they clipping your image and putting on different news broadcasts around the world.
Well, I didn't know. I mean, I was like, wow. I mean, I didn't expect it. You know, I was just doing what we normally did. We would just, you know, cut the video up and put it on social media because a lot of people didn't take the time to watch the whole show, and people don't like long shows, so we'd break them up in 2-minute segments and post them on TikTok. And, you know, I woke up and I see my TikTok, you know, 30,000 followers, 40,000 followers, 1 million views, 2 million views. And it was like, wow. And, you know, people just like, because of course, people wanted somebody to champion the cause. Because we came out of the era where everybody was afraid to speak against the gays and lesbian and transgender. It was almost sacrilegious to speak against them. Or no, you can't say that. Or you can't say that in America, blah, blah, blah. And because we broke that mold now, everybody's now opening up. I mean, in Canada, they opening up. In America, they opening up. And it was like our podcast, our message gave people the impetus to begin to speak freely without fear of being victimized by the gays and so on and so on and so on. And so, you know, they will never stop. And in fact, one of them just writes up on my thing, my TikTok. They say I won't deal with them, do you know? They say, someone need to have you keep your mouth shut forever. This one gay boy said, right? Now, I mean, you think...
How you know they even gay?
Because, they'll twist up on the picture.
So you just think...
No, I mean, I speak out against gays, but I just was talking about how, of course, we did a show where I sent a letter off to the U.S. Congress and telling them that we don't want them to fly the flag in the Bahamas because it disrespects our values. Kevin McCarthy, 2 weeks ago, the U.S. Congress banned flying flags on all embassies around the world. And so I posted that, and that was what they had issues with.
Okay.
Yeah. But for me, it's about standing up for what you believe. We believe in righteousness. We believe in doing things in order. We believe in making sure that we could, while only please man, we got to please God in what we do too. Because at the end of the day, when we reach the end of the road, we all got to give an account. We all got to give an account for what we do.
So, what do you say to the people that feel that because since this happened, you, and obviously you've been booked for speaking engagements across the region, now you're using this platform to somewhat, bolster you, take a page out of other people, I guess, playbook and using this for your political campaign?
That sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. Hey? Listen, in the art of war or in the game of success, you got to use all the strengths and everything you get to get to the top. And so if you have a goal of reaching a certain mile or certain heights and you have a platform to stand on, and stand on that. You know what you're trying to do. You're trying to get your message out, then you got to use whatever avenues to get the message out. A lot of people seem to be they want to repent because they use strategies. Listen, I'm a politician. What politicians do? You're trying to get elected. I'd be damn lying to you all and tell you I don't want to get elected. Yes, I everything I say is to try to convince you to support me. Now, I say the truth. I give you real-life scenarios. I give you the hard, raw, unadulterated truth about life. Now, if you don't like it, then don't support me. If you like it, then let's go.
All right. So let's transition to you being the author. How many books have you written up to date? Because I see
Yes, I have 5 books now. I have 5 books. The first one is a new start in business that I wrote to a guide to helping people write their own business plan, marketing plan. And then the next book I wrote was Dividing the Earth, Noah's Legacy. This is basically can change the foreign policy of the Middle East. A lot of people don't understand or appreciate the dynamics as it relates to the Levantine territory. That is the area where Palestine is. Who owns the rightful claim to the land? Is it the Palestinians? Is it the Jews? Palestinians saying it's theirs, the Jews say it's theirs. This book clarifies that. It tells you from the genesis of when the earth was divided in the days of Peleg, that's Genesis 10:28, when Noah divided the earth amongst his 3 sons, who got what divisions and why they got divisions, and what happened when Cain illegally took over and went into the territory of Shem and took the land of Canaan, which is the land of Israel. And that was illegally taken. And there was a curse pronounced on him by Noah, Mithriam, and Put. Mithriam was his brothers. Mithriam was Egypt, and Put was Libya. And so they announced a curse upon Canaan. Canaan, they said, man, listen, y'all do what you got to do, man. I like this land. And the curse was, from generations to come, your children will be uprooted. Today, his children is being uprooted. The next book is on success, the total package, understanding the true meaning of success. Growing up and understanding and reading many books on success, people focus on money, focus on wealth, focus on material gain and success at the expense of health, social development, educational development, mental development. Success is an indivisible whole. Gandhi said you cannot be successful in one area of life whilst being a failure in others. Life is one indivisible whole. And so in understanding success, you have to have a balance in life. Money is important, but your health is also important. Your social welfare is also important, and so on. So creating that balance. And then I wrote some children's books. I used to read my children some stories when they were young. I used to make it up. And they loved it so much that I read it and read it and read it. And so I put them in a book. And so I have 2 now. I got 2 more I'm finishing up. And so being able to enter the genre of children's space and able to teach children about books and so on. I mean, about bedtime stories, about mysteries and overcoming the wicked witch and so on and so on. And triumph over evil and so on. So it's a good genre. And so I also have some other ones I'm working on, but I have 5 so far.
So how do you balance doing all this in family life?
Well, you include them. If you go with the river, then the journey is easy. But if you go against the river, I always used to tell my wife when we were growing up, the children want to play and you want to play. I said, the problem is, if you're playing with them, it's easy. But if they won't play and you won't play, then it becomes hard. They can argue. So if they want to jump them down the bed, jump up and down the bed with them for a little while. They can get tired, then you go do what you got to do. So for me, it's about making sure you incorporate them as you go and so on. And so you have to find time to be able to do this now. Fortunate for me, though, I can tell you my secret. I broke my foot. And I couldn't walk for 4 months.
But that's a recent thing, new.
Right? Right. And so within that time, I was able to write some good books.
Okay.
So because I could not move, that was a good thing for me because I was like, boom, can't move, can't walk. Listen, my computer was there and I was just moving. So that was also a good thing for me. And so because it's really difficult to carve out time and you got to go this way and go that way and this way and this way. But, you have to find that time.
That's great. So as we will close out, anything, because we over an hour now, anything you would like to leave my viewers with? Upcoming, election ain't for 2 years, but obviously by the end of this year, the political machine can start gearing up.
Whatever you do, wherever I am, I need you to vote for me. I need a little vote. I need that vote. Yeah, I'm the fighter. If you want someone to fight for you in Parliament, that's me. If you want someone to fight for you outside of Parliament, that's me. If you want someone to fight for you in the back of Parliament, that's me. So make sure, listen, it's about fighting for the Bahamas, though. On a serious note, there's so many issues that we have that we need to straighten out. And these guys will seem to have a clue. And I believe that I have some of the solutions, not all, but I can definitely fix this country. I truly believe that. So God has preserved me for a time like this to bring salvation to the Bahamas. So let's go. Let's save the Bahamas.
All right. And with that, I'd like to thank you so much for taking, a peaceful moment out your time to come talk, sit with me. This was a great conversation. We had a lot of points. See, I like homegirls. I just let you talk. Curve the conversation. You go for all. You run your mouth as much as you want.
Yes.
Well, thanks again for coming on Erryting Kool. This was great.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And with that, I can see y'all next time on Erryting Kool.
Erryting Kool.
We starting at the hundreds on a good note, and let's see if we get to 2.
Well, motto.
The tourists come over to chill on the beach, but they don't come over the hill where we sleep.